Did you know that it's been 7 months already? Over 7 months since I've been in Baltimore.
That's wild.
It's wild to me. Like, I'm going to have to renew my lease soon.
It's weird because you came in winter.
I came in the spring.
But it was so cold.
Yeah.
And so, like, that seems like I can't, like, conceptualize how much time has passed since then, but it does not feel like it's been 7 months.
Yeah.
Do you feel like it's been quicker or shorter?
Shorter.
But then I'm also like, feels like you've been here forever.
At the same time,
I mean?
It's weird because it feels like I've kind of just always lived here, even though I don't know where everything is yet. Haven't explored for that much.
Yeah, I mean, neither have I. And I've never not lived here, so just is a part of it.
Yeah, it's just weird that it's been 7 months. But I learned you had OCD through Gigi, your wife, who I also had on the podcast.
Yes.
It was because, I don't remember if it was you or her that had a scrunchie on a lamp because if you didn't move the scrunchie, somebody was going to die. Was that you?
Essentially, that's the story. Yeah, so the scrunchie story is the, like, not infamous, but it's definitely the funny OCD story that Gigi loves to share with friends and family. But yeah, I have OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder.
When did you kind of learn you had OCD? And was this something like you experienced your whole life, or did it pop up?
Popped up.
Really?
Uh-huh. So growing up, ever since I was a little girl, 5, 6 years old, very obvious that I had anxiety, I had depression, and that was always like addressed and treated growing up. But the idea of OCD and like
that was a little out there.
Well, yeah, just never
didn't cross anybody's mind,
and I didn't really like have any behaviors that would fall under that umbrella.
Yeah.
So growing up, it was really just tackling pretty severe anxiety and depression and like, carry on, go to a psychiatrist, therapist a few times a month and like live life. But then once the pandemic happened in technically 2019 is when everything kind of came to light.
Yeah, like, oh, COVID's a thing.
Yeah, COVID's a thing. Here's this, illness. Here's how scary it is. It was like this perfect recipe that triggered this in me. And, at first I was, like responded normally as everybody else did. I was like, oh, this is like weird and scary, but we like have
COVID thing.
I was like, oh, we have like, I get to like work from, or was a student at the time. I get to like do college from home. Like, this is fun. Like I had like a normal response. And then as time passed, this obsessive compulsive behavior just got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until we were on lockdown for years and like didn't see family or friends or...
Was it years?
Years.
Was it 2 years? Just about 2 years.
Of what? When I was like in lockdown?
Yeah.
So we didn't open up our lives until October of 2022 was like the first time I like saw friends since the pandemic.
You started experiencing like a lot of anxiety, and then what was the process of like what is going on?
Yeah.
That you sought a therapist.
Yeah, I was in there.
You were already in therapy.
I've been in therapy since I was a little tyke, right? So like I already went to therapy every week. I have a psychiatrist I see like every so often.
Did they point the OCD out?
Yeah. So this is how it unfolded. So basically, like COVID-19 is a thing. It's kind of all on our minds, but we're still like operating like normal. When I say we, I mean my wife and I operating like normal people, right? Like, we'd like social distance outside and like follow the right things and have some fear, but nothing was like out of control, right? October of 2020, my wife gets COVID. It was like the most mild case. She was sick for like a day, just kind of felt like icky. And when she woke up in the middle of the night with a fever and was like, hey, I don't feel well, all of a sudden it was like everything exploded in me. Like the most fear I could feel, I felt like my life was ending. I was going to die. It was so out of control. And I don't know exactly why I felt so intensely fearful, but I did.
What sparked it was her waking up in the middle of the
Yeah,
night
her being
with
like,
a fever.
oh, I don't feel well. Like,
Yeah.
do I have a fever? And she, took her temperature and had a fever. And I was like, oh my God, she probably has COVID. Oh my God, I'm going to die. I'm going to get too sick. The hospitals are going to be too full. My body can't handle it. We're going to get
everything went to worst case scenario.
Worst case scenario, complete catastrophizing. And then it just started. Like from that point on, the most fear I've ever had about really anything before. And, we had to quarantine from each other and I ended up never getting it.
Lucky you.
Well, I like even you saying lucky you, I'm like, don't say that because then you're going to convince the universe that like something was weird, whatever. But I didn't even end up getting it.
Yeah.
In that like quarantine period or whatever.
I got it when like quarantine was over and like not really a thing anymore. You didn't have to wear masks.
Yeah.
It wasn't required, and I got it, and it was one of the worst sicknesses I've ever experienced in my life.
Okay. So when you say that, now I'm like, shut up. No, it's fine. I have to like be a normal human being, but seems no fun for sure. But not enough to like literally shut down my life for 2 years over.
Yeah. Explain like the process of like when you were diagnosed with OCD.
Once the, Gigi got tested positive, that, I think it was like 14 days we had to quarantine away from each other. That was like emergency. Like I'm calling my doctor every day. I'm freaking out. My therapist is involved. My psychiatrist is involved. And they're like, hey, like, I think you're going to be okay. Like, there's no need to worry. And I was like, no, this is an emergency. I was exposed. And they're like, as was literally every other human being on planet Earth right now. There's no need to freak out. And so I think that's when my therapist's flag like raised. And she was like, this is kind of an odd way for you to be responding to this. From that point on, I'm doing therapy twice a week, just like regular therapy, not specialized for OCD. And she is like getting pretty concerned about how obsessed I am over this, how many, rituals and behaviors I have to keep up with in order to feel like quote unquote safe.
What were the rituals?
So many different rituals. And like, I think people with OCD can relate to this in some capacity, but I could acknowledge that they weren't quote unquote real. Like I'm like, oh my God, I know this is so stupid and doesn't actually control anything.
Yeah.
But like this does control everything and makes everything feel better. So like I'm still doing them. Okay, so some of the rituals, one was the scrunchie, right? So at some point in this chaos of me trying to control weird little things to help ease my fear of COVID was I had a scrunchie that I would wear to bed. Like it was like a silk scrunchie. And it had to be on my bedside table, like in the middle of this like little prayer book that my mom got us. It was like, and that prayer book had all sorts of OCD things I had to do with it. So it had to stay exactly on this prayer book. And to me that like signaled, okay, like everything's gonna be okay.
Yeah.
And like if the scrunchie was off the prayer book, like things were like I wasn't cool with that. What else? I had to like open, I feel like I'm missing all of them. I had to open the shower a certain way just to like make sure it felt right. From like
had to be a smooth open.
Not even a smooth open. It just like had to like check my internal mental boxes.
Yeah.
There's no, like I had to like open it with the certain hand from the certain side. So the little prayer book, which like isn't in my nature really to pray very frequently, but my mom was like, oh, here, like this might be nice for you to like, ease your anxiety. And I'm like, great, like here, I have to read it perfectly every night. And if I don't, something bad's gonna happen. And like I had a lot of rituals surrounding like prayer.
Yeah.
And like if I missed anybody in my prayer list, something bad was gonna happen to them. Or like if I didn't say a prayer correctly, I was gonna get sick. Another ritual was keeping the positive, like I think the I don't know if you guys had this in California, but Maryland would have the positivity rates by county auto uploading every day to like see, you know, if like Baltimore County has a bigger outbreak or whatever. And they also kept hospital room counts of how many hospital beds were open in each hospital and how many were occupied by COVID patients. And how many people of those were in the ICU. And I was convinced that if I got sick, there would be no bed for me. So I would refresh this tracker like probably like 3 to 4 times an hour every day, just to see, okay, there's a bed available. Okay, there's this percent, there's that percent. Here are my odds. That was exhausting. Oh my God.
So rituals like these were what you were telling your therapist?
Yeah, and I think it took a little bit for me to like be honest about the compulsive behaviors I had, because I was like, this is so embarrassing. Like putting a silk scrunchie on top of a book on my bedside table is like off character for my like behavior. And so I was like, oh my God, she's gonna like be like, what are you doing? And of course she was lovely and I ended up telling her like, you know, pretty quickly. But I just remembered another funny one. They're funny. They weren't funny in the moment, but like they're fun. I have to laugh at it now because I'm like, that was wild.
Yeah.
I would have to, if I thought that somebody said something to me that would like jinx the universe, like you saying, knock on wood that I haven't gotten COVID. I'm like, I don't know what that is, but that scares me that you're like putting something into the universe. So I would have to knock on my head 7 times. I'd go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then I'd have to swipe it away. Like I was off my rocker. So
I love that one though.
Someone
that
would be like, yes,
one.
it was so bad. And Gigi would be like, Layne, don't knock in public. And I'm like knocking in public, like swiping it off. Like it was crazy.
Wow.
But yeah, if you said something like, oh, you'll be fine, or you won't get too sick, something that felt like it could like mess with the universe, whatever that means, couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
That's how it felt. You're getting a knock. You're in 7 knocks and you're getting a wipe.
It was just your brain came up with a number.
Yes.
And like, this is what's going to make me feel
Why
better.
did I literally, Laisha, I have no idea. I think it's because, you know, when it's someone's like, oh, knock on wood. And like, if you're not near a table or something, you're like, knock on wood. I think that's what my brain was like.
Yeah.
Oh.
Is your brain just puts it together. Like the scrunchie being on the middle of this prayer book is going to
keep me safe.
Yeah.
No rhyme or reason.
Can I share you my experience? I've never been diagnosed with OCD. I'm going to say that.
Okay.
But when I think back on this, I'm like, that's kind of weird.
Okay.
When I was in elementary school, I thought if I touched doorknobs, I would get pregnant. I told you this.
Oh, wait. Sorry. Bring that back. If you touched a doorknob, you'd get pregnant? Why?
I think it's just like trauma things, and then I would compulsively wash my hands, like wash them so much.
Wait, sorry. No one said anything to you about doorknobs making you pregnant?
No.
Okay, this was a thought.
This was a thought that semen exists on doorknobs.
Okay.
And I thought if I even like touch semen, but I thought even if I touched a doorknob, I would get pregnant.
Oh my goodness.
Like I would like use my shirt, but even I didn't feel good about that. So I'm like, it's on my shirt. And yeah, I would just like, and then like even today I open doorknobs weird.
Me too.
But yeah, I would wash my hands a lot to where like they would crack and bleed.
No.
But I got over it. Like
Anything
over time,
specific?
Over time it kind of just went away.
Yeah.
So that's why I feel like that was my scene, but I think it was over. Like I feel like if I told a doctor that at that time, they'd be like, whoa.
Yeah.
But I slowly got over it.
That's
a little bit.
Really crazy. Yeah, I think that like they don't have to make sense what your compulsion is.
Yeah.
And like what you're obsessingly thinking about.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to make sense. But like there you are washing your hands 3,000 times because you need to make sure convince yourself that you're safe from whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a lot.
Yeah. So I feel like I kind of understand where like there is comfort in doing a little thing.
Yeah. And a lot of the way it was described to me as I started going through like more specialized treatment for OCD was that like oftentimes there's something super stressful happening in somebody's life or, traumatic or different or whatever it is. And the way your brain is trying to make sense of it and make you feel in control again or calm your nerves is controlling very random things that don't actually matter. So when I was feeling so incredibly out of control about the what ifs of COVID and survival rates and could my body handle it and, all these fears I had, my brain was like, okay, to make you feel better, you're going to hyper fixate on the most random things that have nothing to do with the actual situation. So all of your attention's focusing there. So in a way, it kind of like, it was a very unhealthy coping mechanism. It took a lot away from me. I lost a lot of I didn't lose a lot of things in my life, but I lost a lot of experiences I wish I would have had during those 2 years. But it almost got me through it in a way, if that makes sense.
So was that the way your doctors kind of explained OCD to you?
Yeah, I think so. I obviously was diagnosed by a psychiatrist. Yeah. Officially, but then that was I don't know, also probably in October-ish of 2020. But then I started seeing a psychologist that was specific to OCD treatment. I wish I could remember the term of, there's CPT, all the different types of therapy you can do. Yeah. I don't remember the type that people with OCD do. So
what does the treatment kind of look like?
Have you ever heard of exposure therapy?
Yeah.
So that is pretty much the vibe of OCD therapy, but it was really, really complex and confusing because what I was fearful of was COVID and professionals, medical professionals couldn't advise me to go get exposed to COVID to if it was throw up or heights or spiders or whatever, you'd go through a series of inching towards tolerating being uncomfortable in front of whatever your trigger is. But they couldn't be
go expose yourself to COVID.
It's actually so irresponsible for us to be sure, go into a large social setting when there's actual lockdowns happening. So it was weird. They had to kind of go through hoops trying to figure out how to get me through this, writing down, talking through what I'm fearful of, and then getting into the nitty gritty of all the little behaviors I have that I don't feel like I have control over. So the knocking, the putting the scrunchie in the right place, the opening the door the right way. Oh my God. There were so many little things. I can't even remember what they were. They were exhausting trying to keep up with. And then slowly, one by one, challenging the response. So okay, you say something that makes me feel weird about COVID. I want to knock on my head 7 times. Putting a stopper in place, saying, okay, you're not going to knock your head and you're going to go forward and everything's going to be okay.
You had to push yourself to be aware of when you wanted to knock on your head.
Yeah. And then
just resist the
urge, which was so scary because I was fully convinced that if I hadn't acted on any of these rituals, something bad was going to happen. So getting comfortable sitting in that discomfort, which literally sucks.
Yeah.
Literally sucks.
That's almost the same way of coping with anxiety, I feel.
100%. It's all, I could be 120,000% wrong, so no one quote me on this, but the way that it was described to me is this anxiety umbrella. And there's all different things that fall underneath of this anxiety umbrella. And OCD is one of them, panic disorder, all these different pieces. So in a lot of ways, they make sense together, or they're play off of each other or are familiar. So it made sense that that was how I needed to navigate through the OCD was doing the things I had to do when I was little to sleep over at somebody's house when I would always have panic attacks. So
I hated sleepovers too. I didn't get comfortable with it until recently.
Still don't know if I'm comfortable with it. I literally was voted in high school. That'll be the day when, so-and-so does XYZ. And it was, that'll be the day when Layne sleeps away from home. Because I literally, I didn't go on school trips. I didn't go on, overnights, in college when you're getting, recruited for lacrosse. You, go to overnights to, stay with the team and, see how it is. I went to one and I said, never again. Literally lose my number. I'm never going to an overnight again. Did not have sleepovers. Yeah.
I don't know. I wonder what that's about.
Separation anxiety.
You think?
Yeah, I had super, super severe separation anxiety from my mom. And so her going to like the grocery store was insane,
Really?
let alone like sleeping over at somebody's house. I would try, like give it a, valid try every time, and I'd wake up screaming.
Really?
Yeah.
So like what does your OCD and the anxiety stuff look like today?
Yeah. I think it's well, my wife and I have very opposing views on this.
Really?
So to her, like to me, I'm like, I need to be at peace that I will always have anxiety in some capacity. I'll always have depression in some capacity. It'll ebb and flow. It will be literally unnoticeable at some points. It'll be super bad at some points. But like, realistically, like I need to acknowledge that within myself to stay vigilant, stay prepared, stay on top of my things. My wife, on the other hand, is like, I don't want to ever have anxiety forever. Like my goal is to never have anxiety. I want to get rid of it. I don't know if
that's possible.
You'll have like a full debate with her.
Like for example, with addiction, I guess this is a debate as well. But if you're going like big book AA 12-step form, it's typically said that it's something you're going to live with for the rest of your life. And I've been told even in treatment,
yes,
like this is going to be a thing that you're going to have to, manage, cope with
100%.
for the rest of your life. In sobriety, I have addictive tendencies with overindulgence or underindulgence.
Yep.
I'm at extremes.
Yeah.
That's how I'm kind of seeing the anxiety thing.
Yeah, that's how it was also said to me.
Really?
Like similarly, like, hey, like it might not be awful all the time, but like this is a part of your chemical makeup.
Yeah.
Like this is a part of you, this anxiety.
You're 27. You're struggling with anxiety for about that amount of time. I wouldn't say like
a full 26 years, maybe.
When you're 1 year old.
Yeah.
But around that time, like, I just don't think it's gonna like, you're gonna hit 40 and anxiety for the remainder of your life, gone.
Right.
That doesn't seem like,
yeah.
For some reason, I couldn't explain to you why. But
I feel the same way.
I don't believe that it's just gonna like go away one day.
Yeah.
But also, random thought, like, do you think people 50 years ago struggled with anxiety the way people do today? Like millennials and Gen Z?
I think I have two answers to that question. One, yes, I think people deeply struggled 50 years ago or however long ago with anxiety, depression, worries, whatever. But the stigma around it was so different than it is now.
100%.
Like, I think looking at even my mom, for example, like she will tell stories like she had such severe anxiety. She would get stomach aches and she would get sick, and she was like a ball of nerves. And like instead of being treated for anxiety, they would like take her to the stomach doctor for years and years and years. And they're like, oh, maybe you just have stomach aches. And like nowadays, that would be like addressed immediately. Oh my God, okay, your child has stomach aches. It's like appearing as a stomach ache, but it's actually this like anxiety they're feeling, whatever. So I think that's the answer. But also I think it's such a different monster. Like people experiencing anxiety today, like my age and younger, it's such a different monster with like social media.
Yeah, there's so many other factors I feel that induce anxiety.
Like constant, like doom, like there's like a 24-hour news cycle of like there's never a time to rest. Like you can always find scary information or something to worry about or something to be insecure about.
Both of your points.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of like, that's what I was trying to get at, is like I think society today is anxiety inducing.
100%. Literally, I said like Dr. Fauci and the whole COVID task force behind like COVID, they could have told me, Layne, you have to like go on a mission, like find gold, seek diamonds, like ingest like grass. I don't know. I would have followed anything anyone said because I was so scared. I was literally petrified. I was feeding anything that anyone said about COVID that was scary literally took up real estate in my brain for years. So I was like so susceptible to like fear mongering and stuff. I literally believed
a lot
everything.
of people are.
Yeah.
I think it's very common.
Yeah.
I've met a few people where they are kind of hooked on that like 24/7 media news.
Yeah. It's hard. It's hard not to be. I think I learned about this in college a little bit about just how wild the shift to a 24-hour news cycle was on people's like psyche. Like normally it was like, okay, you'd have like, you know, a million years ago would be like the town crier would come in and be like, hi, here's the update that happened. You know, it was like so delayed. And then it became like newspaper. So like every so often they would be able to get like, oh my God, there was this like robbery or whatever. And then it just evolved.
You get the Citizens app. Somebody's like there at the event. They post it on the Citizens app and then boom, you get that notification.
Constant. And it's so important to sign out sometimes.
Yes, 100%. I like was so plugged in and then I'm like, now I'm like, I don't want to be.
I don't want to be
Let me be unaware.
I'm going to be unaware for 45 seconds.
45 seconds.
And I'll tap in when I need to. But like, I'm at max capacity with how much I could handle.
Yeah. We kind of got a little off track.
We got extraordinarily.
But what is it like coping with OCD today?
Yeah. Great question. Thankfully, by the grace of God, therapy, medicine, and family, friends, wife, you name it, was able to kind of take a pretty quick turn out of the OCD stuff. I mean, no, it wasn't quick while I was like in the thick of the OCD symptoms, but like once I started to open my life back up again, it kind of like took off. I was able to see people in person and like not have the most severe mental breakdown for days after. I would sit with a thermometer next to me and take my temperature like 6 times, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then I'd like stop and like 45 minutes would go by and I would do it again. I would like test myself for COVID like 7 times a day.
Really?
We bought the at home like
COVID test?
No, not even like the boxes, like the PCR tests, like the real ones you'd go to a doctor where there's like the machine where it's like 100% accurate. We purchased that because I was so neurotic and I needed to like know for like definitively that I didn't have COVID or that anyone near me didn't have COVID. And this can like tie into like eating disorder stuff. I know you and I wanted to chat about that, but once I started to feel more confident in my health, because during all of this OCD, the 2 years of like totally shutting down my life, not seeing anybody, having all these rituals and thoughts and anxiety, I was so deep in an eating disorder. And so I knew that like my fear was very much so correlated with my health. And I knew that I wasn't quote unquote healthy. Like my body was going through it. And so as I started to come out of the issues with the eating disorder, I started to feel like more and more confident of what I could handle. Like, okay, you know, like maybe my body could handle getting a cold, or maybe my body could handle having a cough. Like it doesn't seem as scary as I found myself more and more confident in.
That was when your eating disorder was getting better. Getting better.
Yeah. I had like slowly getting a better grasp on, you know, my eating disorder and my relationship with food and my mind and body and soul and all the things. And so it was like this perfect storm of, okay, eating disorder is improving after like years and years of therapy and treatment. My health is also improving because of this. And therefore, the OCD surrounding my health is getting quieter and quieter. And the more I had like real life in-person moments, I was like, that is so worth it to like be with my family and like enjoy life and go out to dinner, or actually go out to dinner took a little bit to do that. But like, you know, go over to my mom's for a night with my family. That was so enjoyable and so much more worth it than I ever anticipated. I was like, if the consequence of going and like having these real life in-person connections and experiences with my like family or friends is getting sick, I was like, I might be okay with that.
Okay.
Because being with the family and being with the friends and having real...
The pros were outweighing the cons.
Yes, exactly. And that like, I was like...
Your brain was rationalizing.
Yes. Okay. It like hit me like a ton of bricks one day. I was like, oh my God, that felt so good. I think
Did the evidence help of like, I went out to dinner?
It could.
Sometimes it would.
Sometimes it would, but then I would get like stuck down a little OCD loop with that. Being like, okay, but you can't be so sure, and you never know, and there's this false sense of safety. It was all about this like false sense of safety that I was so scared of. And so, okay, if I went out once, I would like do all the math in my brain to like make sure that like everyone was 6 feet or whatever. And it was exhausting. But then once I like didn't even focus on the statistics part of it, being like, okay, I was able to go there and I didn't get sick. Mm-hmm. It was more because like that, I'm like, I'm still focusing on getting sick. It was more like I'm able to go out and enjoy my time. Okay, moving on. Like whatever happens, happens, and I can't obsess over what might happen.
Mm-hmm. So I kind of want to hear a little bit about your experience recovering from an eating disorder. I've had a few friends who've struggled with an eating disorder. Mm-hmm. I really sympathize because I see that the process is really hard, and obviously food is something we have to eat, mm-hmm. and it's not like there's almost not a choice with eating. And then like, for example, drugs, you could live without that.
Laisha, it's actually crazy, and I feel like that doesn't get enough attention because with drugs, alcohol, gambling, whatever it is, like you don't actually need that to survive. So you don't have to learn to live with it. Yeah. You can like learn to live without it, right? But with eating, they're like, hi, you actually have such an issue around this. You have to do it every day, a few times a day actually, mm-hmm. and figure it out. It's so difficult. But yeah, eating disorders suck. I feel like my OCD took such a toll on me mentally. My life will be changed forever. Like I missed a lot, and like I don't know, I feel like I could go down that rabbit hole of like how much that impacted me and Gigi in so many different parts of my life, like in a really, really unfortunate way. But with the eating disorder stuff, like that gets you. Yeah. Like that literally threw off the trajectory of my life. Like I feel like if I didn't have this eating disorder, I would be in such a different space. I don't even know if that means like if I'd be so much better off or I'd be so much worse. I don't mean it in that way. I just know that it like changed my perception of myself, the world, what I'm capable of. Like it was just a really...
In what way?
You know, once I started to realize I was treated differently and thought of myself differently when my body started to change, like any like dream I had or like thoughts of the future or like I guess like worthiness is the right word, literally went out the door. And it wasn't like I was sitting in my room like this like sad puppy, like, oh my God, I'm so sad and like everything's bad and no one likes me. It wasn't like that. It was like, I'm gonna be here, I'm gonna have my fun, I'm gonna be with my friends, I'm gonna like engage a little bit with the life around me, but I am not gonna do the extra that I always thought I would do in life. Like, you know, get an internship in New York and, you know, play college lacrosse for all 4 years. There was like so many different parts of my life that were just like ready to go. And as soon as the eating disorder stuff started to unfold, it was like, I can't handle it.
What was your form of eating
what flavor of eating disorder did I have?
I don't know. What's the proper way of saying it?
Like what was like, how did you like act on symptoms? I don't know.
Yeah, what was like your act of symptoms?
Yeah, so I was, I don't know, can I say was? I don't know what it is. So I struggled with binge eating disorder. I mean, eating disorders come in many shapes and sizes. Some people restrict, some people overeat and binge, some people do a little mix of both, some people binge and purge, some people eat inanimate objects and things that aren't food. Yeah.
I didn't know about that one.
There's a name to it. And every time like you would go in treatment and, you know, worked with nutritionists and therapists and psychologists specific to eating disorders for many years. And you have to answer questions and they're like, do you eat napkins? Do you eat dirt? And I'm like, what? But yeah, it's a whole, there's like, it's wild.
So what was the treatment process with that?
Good question. It's actually funny that you're saying this. So many of the things I've struggled with like all boil down to like trying to grasp some form of control. So with like the obsessive compulsive disorder stuff, I'm like doing all the things and doing the weird compulsions to control my fear. With the eating disorder, it was food was the like medium that I was controlling to try and control all the other things going on, like my anxiety or whatever it was.
But I am kind of curious about the control thing. Yeah. So like the OCD and the eating disorder all looped into this control. If you're comfortable sharing, why do you think you struggle with control so much?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think I don't know if I've really dove into that theme in therapy.
Sometimes
enough.
And like in life, honestly, sometimes the why doesn't matter. It's just like the fact that you know that this is a thing.
Yeah.
It's just, but like human curiosity, I'm kind of curious why. Like for me and my addiction, I wonder why I have this addiction issue.
Yeah.
I couldn't give you an answer for that. So if you don't have an answer, it's completely fine.
I think it's a perfect blend of nature versus nurture. Like I come from, both of my parents have depression and anxiety. So, and like their parents did. And, it's like the nature part of it, check that box. But then the nurture side, I think a lot of my childhood was like not out of control. Like, I grew up very privileged. I grew up in a safe home with loving mom, loving parents, great sisters, like, nothing crazy. I think when it came to just like the severe separation anxiety with my mom, since, it's like a little girl, that just like catapulted a lot of my behavior as I grew up. Like this uncontrollable, unsoothable anxiety and panic. I think I was just like grasping at all the different things to try and make myself feel better. And it like developed into these, coping mechanisms. Yeah. They're not necessarily related, but like I think it all stemmed from that.
So what was the recovery with the eating disorder?
What it looked like for me was working with a nutritionist who specialized in eating disorder recovery, a therapist who specialized in eating disorder recovery, and a psychologist that did as well. So it was like a 3-person team, full trio. And with my therapist, we'd work on the thoughts I had around food, the rules I had around food, more of the emotional side of things, and trying to like, challenge those behaviors. Homework would look like, okay, sit down when you eat, or like put your food on a plate and get through a meal. Little things like that. And then nutritionist would help me look at what I'm eating, which is really, really hard for me. Basically like a class, like break down, okay, when you did this, what were you feeling? Were you grounded when you were eating this? Okay, let's look at this meal you had. Here's what we could have done to make it well-rounded, or different tips and tricks from like a nutrition standpoint. And then psychologist was like, Lexapro, doing the right thing, making sure I was like, okay, from like a medical standpoint.
Yeah, medicinally.
Yeah.
Did you have struggles with accepting medication? Or you were like, I'm down.
Give it to me. No, so here, actually, this is super interesting. So I've always been on an SSRI since I was like a little kid. Anxiety medicine of sorts. I think like 3rd or 4th grade is when I first started taking medicine for anxiety, like daily medicine. And then as I got older and the anxiety was getting like increasingly worse, and I like wasn't sleeping away from home, I couldn't leave house, whatever, I would get prescribed like benzos, like a Xanax or like a Klonopin or something, like for immediate relief.
My favorite.
Terrified. Could not convince me to take it. I was so afraid of feeling out of control. And I'd have like, I'd have these medicines, and I would be in the middle of like a severe panic attack. I'm like up for days. I can't function. But like, you could not convince me to take the medicine. Not because I'm like anti-medicine, but I was just so convinced that it wasn't going to work on me and it was going to make me feel loopy and anxious. So then I'd be like stuck feeling loopy and anxious and miserable. And yeah, taking anxiety relief medicine I'm not great at that. But I like having it to know I have it, but I'll never take it.
It's an option.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, it's in the cupboard. If I really, really need it, it's right there.
But I won't do it.
It expires every year and I get it refilled because I'm scared if I take something that it's expired, I'll get sick. My psychiatrist is like, dude, you can keep the medicine. Like, you don't take it. Like, if it's expired by a month, I'm sure you'll be okay. I'm like, no, I need a full. Toss the old one, get the new one.
I know there's no time frame with recovery in general from anything.
Right.
But I kind of want to know what your process was like with the recovery. Like, yeah, you had this trio.
Had the trio.
You had your medication.
Yeah.
You're talking to a nutritionist, therapist.
Yeah.
But like, what were your feelings? What were the feelings associated with the change?
Woof. It was awful. So awful. I think, I mean, I grew up in a body that would be deemed healthy from society. You know, I wasn't too thin. I wasn't overweight. I was just like quote unquote healthy. Like, healthy is only determined by you and your doctor. So like, I'm not going to be that person to push that narrative. But like, I would like have thoughts about my body being, I wanted to be skinnier or whatever. But it was like, kind of like, I would push that towards like maybe normal teenage girl thoughts about bodies. Like, normal meaning like, I think at some point every girl is like, oh, I wish I looked XYZ, or I wish I was this, or I wish I was that.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like consuming my life at all.
The way your body looked.
No. Like, I was just kind of like, oh, like
it was
just my body, whatever.
You didn't have any issues surrounding the way your body looked.
Not necessarily, no.
What led you to seek help with?
Well, so that was before I had an eating disorder. I was saying, like, growing up. Okay. I didn't have an eating disorder, and I never really thought about my body too deeply. I just kind of like ate when I ate. Yeah. Worked out, was an athlete. Bing bong boom. Like, sometimes I'd be like, oh, I feel fat, whatever that means, but my life would carry on. Like, I wouldn't like adjust my eating or whatever. And then I got to college and everything switched. It was like, I was so deeply anxious and depressed about being away from home and this huge life shift that virtually everyone in my life said was not possible for me to make, like going away to college. Like, valid, probably shouldn't have done that, like for my mental health. So I'm like in survival mode. I stopped taking my Vyvanse, which I had been prescribed since I was in lower school. Had no idea how much of an impact that Vyvanse has on binge eating disorder. It's an FDA-approved treatment for eating disorder, for binge eating. Yeah. And so
Vyvanse was the first pill I abused. It wasn't prescribed to me.
Oh.
And I remember the feeling of like, wow, I don't need a meal right now.
Yes. And it can totally get that way for some people. Like, the whole idea of like, oh, it suppresses your appetite, and like people abuse it in that way. And for all the other reasons, that's super dangerous. And I think a lot of providers are very wary of prescribing, that I've come into contact with, prescribing Vyvanse for binge eating disorder specifically.
Yeah.
But I was on Vyvanse because I have ADHD my whole life. So this like beast was awoken in me. I had no idea that was going on in my head, and the Vyvanse suppressed it. And then I stopped taking my Vyvanse because I'm so nervous. I'm not sleeping at school. Yeah. And like, I can't put a stimulant in my body. Yeah. Like, I'm just going to take the L on like not paying attention in classes because I hope I'll sleep tonight. And that like woke up in my brain. And then all of this, like these food thoughts happened. Noise, eat. Like, I don't even know what it was. It was like all consuming. Yeah. And then I had stress fractures going into college. And so I played lacrosse in college. Well, I was supposed to play lacrosse in college. And going into my freshman year my first semester, I had stress fractures, so I wasn't able to work out like I normally was, and I was on injured reserve, and so I like wasn't moving my body the way I used to, and I wasn't on this medication that like unknowingly suppressed this eating disorder in my brain for a billion years. Boom.
So today, what is your relationship like with food?
Great question. Always has to be, something I think about. Not necessarily like food and controlling food, but I just have to always be aware that I have a very sticky brain and I get hung up in behaviors and thoughts. And the second I lose sight of that, we're like getting down a slippery slope of binging and restricting and all that stuff. So today, thankfully, it looks much, much better. Honoring hunger, honoring fullness is just hard for me. Like it literally is. I don't know why my brain is made up that way. I don't know why it's hard for me to like honor a fullness cue, but it is. Yeah. But I have to know that about myself when I'm eating. It's like, I don't know how to describe it, but I just have to be aware of it, because if I'm not aware of it, I have no off button, or I'll restrict and get really weird. So today my life looks normal. I'm not thinking about binging and restricting.
In the midst of your eating disorder, it was ignoring those cues.
100%. So out of whack, so out of tune with my body. I'm not listening to what my body's telling me. Like a normal human being feels hunger, eats, feels full, stops eating. Was so unaware of that feeling of hunger and fullness. And it's like, I have to practice it. Like, I don't understand that like natural relationship with food. Like, it's very robotic in my brain, but it has to be, or else I am being a freak and not eating for days and then like eating until I'm sick.
So both your OCD and your eating disorder is something you kind of keep in the back of your mind?
Yeah.
Of like the awareness.
Yeah, I think it's like just staying vigilant almost. I'm not like, oh my God, I have an eating disorder, I have OCD every day, like, let's go. It's just like giving myself some grace and being like, hey, you struggle in these areas. Let's be honest. Let's take some action so you don't struggle and carry on.
And like utilizing different coping skills.
For sure.
Which took, I'm sure, years too.
Years. And I'm like obviously not perfect in the slightest, but like with the food stuff, it's, using the coping skills that I've put in my like quote unquote toolbox throughout the years. Definitely not perfect. Very hard to keep consistent, to stay reasonable, to stay rational. Like I said, my therapist described my brain. I have a very sticky brain. You tell me something scary, it's sticking in there. You tell me something, like the thoughts in my brain are sticking in there. And so I have to be like very on top of working against that, because I'll let whatever the thought is dictate so much.
I mean, I've spoken with someone who had autism and OCD. The way he described it is like, I asked him the question, like, do you know that's not true? That like, this isn't going to happen if you don't do this. Or I'm not sure what the thoughts are with eating, that are correlated with eating disorders, but I'm sure there's like false, not true thoughts in that as well. And I feel like with addiction, I feel like in like coping with addiction, even in sobriety, my brain says a lot of things that aren't reality and aren't true. Yeah. Can you now kind of dictate the truth from the false? Because the person I talked to previously was like, I know it's not true, but I can't stop.
Yeah, 100. I think I mentioned that like a little bit ago when we were talking.
But like now, is it controlling?
It's so hard. I think during the whole time back then, if someone said, is this realistic? Are your thoughts about controlling these weird things in your house going to actually impact whether you live or die from COVID-19? I'd be like, no. But like, I'd still do it anyways. But today it's no, and I'm not going to do them. So I'm not going to engage in the behavior, even though like back then I knew it was whack that I was doing that.
Yeah. Now that I'm thinking about it, that's not really a helpful way of going about like, hey, you know, that's not true, right?
Well, sometimes it is.
Is it?
Yeah, because I think
it's
it's
to say like Layne, that's wrong.
Yeah, because like sometimes you're like just delusional.
Because
like so if someone sat you down and was like, hey, it's okay if you touch a doorknob, nothing bad's gonna happen to you. Like that's okay to plant that seed because it's true.
I guess, yeah.
You gotta stay like true. I love to live in the black and white, and you gotta live in the gray. And so like, what's the gray?
You don't want to like enable,
Mm-hmm.
and you also don't want to like just tell them that they're crazy.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a very odd balance, and I'm sure my wife could speak to that more of like what it's like being with somebody with OCD and seeing them just like have a total false sense of reality and like go off the chain with whatever they're doing. But no, I do think sometimes it is helpful. Like when my therapist would be like, hey, when you knock on your head, nothing is going to,
it doesn't change
It does
anything.
not impact a single thing. I'm like, oh.
What would you say to somebody struggling with either OCD or an eating disorder?
Boring answer, but you have to seek professional help. I think there's so many resources that are accessible, even if it's literally just like going online and reading about it or watching YouTube videos about it, because I think I feel lucky that I had a lot of context about the importance of mental health, and there was like a foundation since I was little about like people struggle and it might look this way for somebody and it might look that way for somebody else, but like you always have somebody to talk to. Here are your resources. So while these feelings felt really scary, I knew that there was like a reasonable solution I could go to. But I feel like people who don't have that context and all of a sudden start like tapping on their head 7 times, they're like, oh my God, this is like so like out of character. This is so crazy. This is really scary. So I feel like being able to learn and like give yourself the foundation that like, hey, obsessive thoughts are really freaking weird. You have no control over them sometimes. You're not crazy. Can help ease that like initial shock. Yeah, finding a provider that you click with, that you trust. Like OCD and eating disorders take time. They're such beasts to try to understand and like get honest with yourself about, but like you don't have to live with that. Giving it to somebody who knows what they're talking about is kind of, in my eyes, like the only right way to go if you're struggling.
Well, Layne, I really want to thank you for coming on the podcast today and sharing your experience with mental health.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Love what you do here. Yeah, fuck the stigma.